All right, let's dive right into this explainer breaking down James Clear's absolute juggernaut of a book, Atomic Habits. I mean, there's a reason this thing has sold millions of copies and basically dominated bestseller lists for years, right? Today, we're taking all that wisdom and distilling its core philosophy into 10 rapid-fire, literally life-changing lessons.
But first, we kind of have to start with a painful question. Why do our resolutions fail so often? Why is it that, despite our absolute best intentions to eat healthier or read more or build some new skill, we usually end up right back where we started? Well, we usually blame ourselves. We think we just inherently lack the willpower or the motivation to actually change. But James Clear argues that sheer willpower is never enough. And honestly, the problem isn't actually you.
The problem is your system. And that brings us to this incredibly powerful quote, which is basically the central thesis of the entire book. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Your daily habits, they are the systems that dictate your long-term success. So if you want to change your life, you've got to change those daily systems.
So, let's get into it. Lesson 1, the philosophy of getting just 1% better every day. Clear calls this the compound interest of self-improvement. We always tend to overestimate the importance of one single defining monumental moment, and we vastly underestimate the value of making tiny, small improvements on a daily basis. Here's the wild math behind that. If you can get just 1% better at something each day for one full year, you don't just become 365% better. No, because of the compounding effect, you end up a staggering 37 times better by the time the year is done. 37 times? But you gotta contrast that compound interest against the alternative. If you slip up and get 1% worse each day for a year, you don't just stay stagnant, you experience a really steep decline, dropping almost all the way to zero. What starts as a tiny little win or a minor setback, it accumulates over time into something massive. Basically, your current trajectory matters way more than your current results. Moving right along to lesson 2, systems versus goals. When we want to achieve something, our very first instinct is to completely obsess over the finish line. Goals are simply the outcomes you want to achieve, right? Like losing 20 pounds. But systems are the daily processes that actually guarantee you get there. Think about it. If you set a goal to clean your house, but you have no daily system for tidying up, you're just going to be constantly playing catch up. To survive that initial, super frustrating plateau where results are basically invisible, you've got to shift your focus. True long-term thinking is actually goalless thinking. It's all about the endless refinement of your systems.
All right, lesson 3 takes us into the absolute deepest layer of behavior change, identity-based habits. Clear compares behavior change to the layers of an onion. Outcomes are the outer layer, processes are the middle, but the deepest core, that's your identity. The secret here is that true behavior change is actually identity change. If you start with outcome-based habits, you're focusing on what you want to achieve. But with identity-based habits, you focus on who you want to become. So don't say, I want to run a marathon. Say, I am a runner. Literally every single action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. So, to understand how to actually implement these changes in your life, we need lesson 4, the habit loop. Our brains are continuously scanning our environment, right? Predicting what's going to happen next and learning from the results. And this creates a 4-step neurological feedback loop. First, a cue triggers a craving. Then, that craving motivates a response, which finally provides a reward. Think of walking into a dark room. The cue, it's dark. The craving, well, you want to see. The response, you flip the switch. And the reward, boom, you can see clearly. Clear takes those 4 steps of the habit loop and transforms them into his famous 4 laws of behavior change. Lesson 5 is law number 1, make it obvious. This tackles the cue stage. You absolutely need to make the cues for your good habits incredibly obvious, and the cues for your bad habits basically invisible. The best way to do this is through environment design. Studies actually show most people just choose the default option of whatever environment they're in. So design it. If you want to watch less TV, hide the remote in a drawer. If you want to read more, leave a book right on your pillow. If you want to eat better, put apples out on the counter instead of cookies. Just make the right choice the most obvious choice. That brings us to lesson 6, which is law 2, make it attractive. This focuses entirely on the craving stage. Our brains are hardwired to seek out rewards. In fact, dopamine, that feel-good chemical, it doesn't just spike when we experience pleasure, it spikes when we anticipate it. That anticipation is what actually drives us to act.
A super clever hack to utilize this is called temptation bundling. You simply pair an action you want to do with an action you need to do. For example, if you love listening to audiobooks but absolutely hate exercising, make a strict rule for yourself that you can only listen to your audiobooks while you're at the gym. Suddenly, a hard, necessary habit feels totally irresistible because it's bundled with a really great reward. All right, Lesson 7 introduces Law 3, make it easy. This is all about the response. Human nature will always default to what is easiest and requires the absolute least amount of friction. If a habit takes too much physical or mental effort, you just aren't going to do it. To combat this, Clear suggests the 2-minute rule. When you start a new habit, scale it way down so it takes less than 2 minutes to complete. Don't commit to some grueling 45-minute workout. Just commit to putting on your workout clothes and tying your shoes. By making that very first step ridiculously easy, you overcome the heavy friction of starting a daunting task. And Lesson 8 is the final law, make it satisfying. This completes the habit loop by focusing on the reward. Your brain needs a compelling reason to repeat an action. If the behavior fails to satisfy your desire, you won't do it again. You need immediate positive reinforcement to signal to your brain, hey, that felt good, let's remember to do that next time. A highly effective way to make habits satisfying is by tracking them. Clear actually created an official Atomic Habits workbook specifically to help you actively map out these behaviors. Putting a big X on a calendar or checking a box on a tracker provides immediate visual proof of your progress. It's incredibly satisfying, and honestly, every checkmark serves as concrete evidence that reinforces your brand new identity. Okay, now we're transitioning into some more advanced tactics with Lesson 9, habit stacking. This relies on a biological process called synaptic pruning. As you age, your brain deeply strengthens the neural connections that you use every single day. You can leverage these deeply entrenched pathways to build a powerful chain reaction using a really simple formula. After my current habit, I will do my new habit. So instead of vaguely saying, I will meditate today, you say, after I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute. See what happens there? You anchor the new behavior right to a strong existing pathway.
Finally, we've reached Lesson 10, the Goldilocks rule.
Once you've built a habit, how do you avoid that dreaded plateau of boredom? Well, the Goldilocks rule states that we experience peak motivation when we're working on tasks right on the very edge of our current abilities. Not too hard, not too easy, just right. Consider the comedian Steve Martin. He performed for over a decade, slowly adding just a minute or two of new material to his routine every single year. He kept the guaranteed laughs to stay confident, but added just enough new material to stay challenged. By working at what you might call a just manageable difficulty, he stayed in a flow state, continuously growing until he became a wild, massive success.
We've covered a ton of ground here in this explainer, from the math of 1% improvements to literally hacking your brain's habit loops. But if there's just one thing you take away from all of this, let it be this. Your identity emerges out of your habits. So I want to leave you with a really powerful question. What is your next action a vote for? Every single choice you make today is casting a vote for the person you are going to be tomorrow. So choose your votes wisely.